counts. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe Professor Wilmer Leon knows. My man, Professor Dr. Wilmer Leon is a political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots on YouTube. You can check him out. How you doing this morning, my man? You doing all right?
My brother, I'm talking to you. I'm doing great. As my father would say, I'm gonna mess around and learn something.
Are you? Well, I guess both of us going to mess around and learn something because that was my point. Also, that's the entire point of me bringing you on. I'm glad you could join me, man. I really do. I always enjoy these conversations.
Well, and so do I. Thank you.
I really want to start with the Bernie Sanders thing. I made a video putting a knife in Sanders, but he was part of my political awakening. And because he always has a special spot in me. I also think ultimately he means well. So I want to put that out too. Meaning, I don't think Sanders is a negative actor in a way that I think some other people are. I just think what he does is unhelpful in this case. So, for example, this line is around the block. Sanders. They want to hear him talk. Hundreds of people are piling into a small location in order to see Bernie Sanders talk. And apparently the line is so long, it'll take 10 minutes to get to the location. I remember being in Temple, Pennsylvania to watch Bernie Sanders talk for the first time. It was a religious experience. The only thing I could really balance it with is when I was in the Vatican watching the Pope and having all of these people in perfect unison staring at a little window at the little man saying something in Italian that I had no idea what he was saying. But there is a feeling about it that is very difficult for me to describe. Not a Christian, still felt that way. I felt that way at the Sanders rally, where all these people are in unison. Healthcare, education, expansion of Social Security. We're on the same page. We're going to change the world. That was our mindset. And then Sanders runs, I don't want to say a half-assed campaign, but a campaign where it seemed like he didn't believe he could win himself. That he just wanted to push Clinton. And at some point realized, oh, right, I have a chance to win this. But at that point, it was effectively too late. Not to mention they screwed the guy out of the race. He turns around and says, vote Clinton. He runs against Joe Biden, turns around, vote Joe Biden. Sanders had tens of millions of people that were willing to bleed on the flag for him, to crawl over hot glass to vote for Bernie Sanders. And all of that energy, it turns around and gets channeled into a Democratic Party that cheated him. This crowd, in 3 years, Sanders is going to say, vote whatever random Democrat that they put up. And I'm saying that's a problem that needs to stop. Is there a left beyond Bernie Sanders? And if so, what is it?
Wow, that's a great question. I love the way you just set this up. I don't think there's an organized left beyond Bernie Sanders. And there's hardly an organized left, period. And you echoed to a great degree my sentiments as it relates to Bernie Sanders. I remember watching him on a town hall in West Virginia. This was probably 2016. And he was so profound. He was so powerful in his clarity. And he was right. They were talking about the fentanyl crisis and the prescription drug crisis in West Virginia. And he had those folks eaten out of his hand. And a guy stood up and said, I never thought I would have seen the day when I would be sitting here listening to a Yankee from the North and willing to vote for him. That's how profound he was. I've also come to believe that this duopoly, this two-party system is so powerful that it takes an incredibly powerful mindset to buck the system, especially if you've come out of or are in the system.
Right.
To your point, I don't think he's duplicitous. I don't think there's any ill intent or that he's trying to mislead anybody. I think he honestly believes in what he's doing.
Yes.
And then I also think that he's afraid of being blamed for a catastrophic loss by the Democratic Party. And I think that mindset was also prevalent in Dr. West.
But they've already had a catastrophic loss.
Hey, man. Yeah, but they didn't get blamed for it.
I guess my point is like, it's like, dude, you're if you were trying to save the world, like, meaning, if that's your mindset, I'm going to save the world. Because that's what all of those people thought who was at that rally. That is what they got. We are here for political revolution. Okay, well, what does that mean? This is a change. This is something that is fundamental change. All of those people agreed. How can you run a race under that mindset of, I'm here to change the world, but I'm terrified of being blamed? It's a risk. You have to accept the risk. And they already lost to Trump twice.
Hey, you know, I've never played the game at that level. I've only been an analyst. I'm only a political scientist. I haven't been out there taking them shots like that. I don't know the answer to that question. But I agree with you. You know, you play silly games, you win silly prizes. So we're talking about Bernie Sanders, but I'll throw Dr. West into this conversation as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and he's a very dear friend of mine. I couldn't understand, and I had these conversations with him. I couldn't understand how you tell the country you're running for president, and then you try to run the campaign on your terms. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
The process isn't set up for that. And, you know, when they came after Dr. West on the child support and the other financial issues, the validity or invalidity of that is not relevant to this conversation. How could you not anticipate those shots?
Right.
So, you know, staying in the Green Party, in my humble opinion, was the lockdown, cold-blooded move. That's where you should have stayed. That's where the apparatus was. That's where the money was. That's where the ballot, that's where access to the ballot was. But he was advised. And see, this is you also have to, you can't only look at the candidate, you also have to look at the advisors.
Mm-hmm.
He was advised to go another direction. That wasn't the direction I would have advised him to go. But he decided to go another direction. Bernie has become the bell cow for the Democrats.
Yes. And that is very frustrating to me. Because to me, if I have, and again, I haven't played the level, fair enough. I'm just an analyst, a humble analyst, right? I don't even have a doctor in front of my name. So there's that. But I do play chess, and I'm damn good at it.
Uh-huh.
And in a political space, if you have 20, 30 million people, that is power. Right. Even if it's not enough to win, that is power. That is enough. I have enough to make you lose.
Right.
Which means I can destroy it all. That is a power. It may not necessarily be a power that people necessarily like to employ, but damn it, I'm willing to employ it if I need to. And if you have that many people and you are going into some kind of political negotiation, you have chips. I guess I'm saying, for one, I wish you would have went after her throat and Joe Biden's throat, like the world depended on it, in the way that he articulated the world depended on it. Like, how are you telling me this is so radically important that we need a political revolution, but I'm going to, dance around the fact that Joe Biden is out of his mind, that he's old, and that his policies suck. Like, it's like, that is so frustrating to me. It's almost like it is difficult to get a good man in politics for various reasons. Some of those things is that guy is not going to want to do the things necessary in order to win. That's how I feel about Sanders. And I guess my thing is, there has to be something beyond that. There has to be, and I know you're going to hate this word, a Trumpian left that still has a moral component, but is willing to put a knife in his opposition and not care in the way that Trump just doesn't seem to care. I'm going to end the war. What about that tax? I don't care about that tax. I'm going to end the war. People told me to end the war. That's what I'm going to do. We don't have that. And then I know they always compare Trump to Sanders just because of the populist element. But Sanders is not that guy where he is willing to just win, regardless of what happens. Win. Whatever the risk. Win. That's not him. There has to be something beyond that. I don't know what that something is.
2 examples. The first example I'll use is Reverend Jackson.
Jesse Jackson.
And when he ran in 88, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Before Clinton.
A lot of people don't appreciate the power of the Jackson campaign. You would not have Barack Obama if it hadn't been Jesse Jackson, and I go back to the advisors and my mentor, Dr. Ronald Walters. As the Democrats were trying to get Reverend Jackson out of the campaign, he negotiated the primary condition for his leaving the campaign was proportional distribution of delegates. You will do away with the winner-take-all system, and you will assign delegates proportionally. That's what enabled Barack Obama to stay in the race long enough to gain traction in the 90, whatever year it was he ran.
Yep.
That's wielding power. And what the Democrats also did was they absorbed a lot of Reverend Jackson's people into the party apparatus, to a great degree, diluting a lot of the power going forward. But my point is, he got out of the race and he got something for it that was tangible, and we saw its benefit in the election of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast that to Hakeem Jeffries.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
He's the minority leader. But the problem is the Democrats are operating as the minority party instead of operating as the opposition. And so all they do is capitulate and go along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because the mindset of the party has changed.
What does that mean? Explain that. Look, I agree with you. Give me a take on it, though. What do you mean when you say the mindset of the party has changed?
Well, they're no longer and I'm using these references in terms of stereotypically. I know that from a policy perspective, this wasn't always the case, but the perception of the Democrats was they were the party of the working class. Right. They were the party that advocated for the poor. They were the anti-war party. They were the party of the average citizen. And again, we can look at the Voting Rights Act, we can look at the Civil Rights Act, we can look at the Fair Housing Act, we can look at the Fair Employment Act. All of these things came from public unrest, civil unrest, appeals to a Democratic president who got this legislation through. They are now the party of war. And they are the party of, for all intents and purposes, they're the party of capitulation. They're not as much opposed to the policy of the Republicans. They're opposed to the operational aspects of it. So they argue around the edges. They argue around the fringes. Because Hakeem Jeffries is not going to stand at the podium and say, no, we're not doing it this way. We're not having this. You're not. I mean, he's saying that right now as it relates to Friday and the looming shutdown. I think I heard him yesterday. The Democrats are not. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see where we are on Saturday. If you're still holding this ground on Saturday, then I'm wrong. And I will gladly admit I'm wrong. But something tells me, based upon your history, Hakeem Jeffries, that you're going to fold like bad origami. Because you always do. Well, you see, we couldn't have the public. Oh, you see, man, I thought you said you were going to stand your ground. So it's hard. I don't say this to make excuses for getting back to Bernie Sanders. All of that to say, I think he's scared.
I agree.
I think he's scared.
I do agree with you. I mean, he said it himself that I don't want to be the next Ralph Nader. Chris Hedges said he had a conversation with Bernie Sanders. And Sanders said something to the effect of, I don't want to be Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader is the one who they blamed for the law. I forget the candidate who was running. It might have been.
And what did I say 5 minutes ago? He doesn't want to be blamed as Dr. West, I believe. He didn't say this to me. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
He did not want to be blamed for being the spoiler. And what did Kamala Harris say during the 16 campaign? I think it was 16, first time. Yeah, the 16 campaign during the first debate. I'm not here for substantive change. I remember her saying that very clearly. I'm not here for substantive change. It takes you are putting a target on your back, literally and figuratively. If you step out on that stage and tell them, we're going to burn this rascal down. It takes a Dr. King. It takes a Malcolm. It takes a Fannie Lou Hamer to sit there at the table and say, hey, I got the match and the Molotov, and we about to burn this rascal down.
Or it takes somebody who just says that they don't care. Or it takes somebody who leans on this idea of this is necessary to move in a direction. Like me, I guess my thing is there's a contradiction in what he says versus what he does.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, he capitulates.
Yes. And I'm saying, don't tell me that you want a political revolution. Like, this is going to change. This needs to change.
Right.
And then sheepishly go in a campaign. Those things don't work together. Like, you are getting people fired up. And then it's like, now I need you to go vote Democrat.
Right.
Joe Biden is the next FDR.
Look, who is from South Carolina?
You mean Clyburn?
Clyburn. You've got this whole crew. How many members in the Black Caucus? 43, 44?
Something like that. Yeah.
Only 2 or 3 of them are worth anything. Only 2 or 3. And I mean that 2 or 3.
Yeah.
They were, their moniker was the conscience of the Congress. Now they're unconscious. I wrote a piece to that effect. Al Green from Texas. The sister from Detroit, the Palestinian sister from Detroit.
Oh, Rashida Tlaib.
Rashida Tlaib and Ilana
Presley.
Yeah, well, no. There's another sister from Texas who Crockett.
The nasty mouth one.
Crockett and the sister from Minnesota. That's 5. I'm hard pressed to find number 6. I'm hard pressed to find number 6.
I got to be honest, Crockett has been somewhat of an embarrassment from my point of view. And unless I'm getting the person wrong, that was the one that was doing a nasty mouth video, like she was coming out of a club. I don't know if you've seen the video.
I haven't seen the video.
So the Democrats had decided that they wanted to do, I guess, promos. And one of the promos that they were doing was like in an anime game where they were pretending like they were ready to fight. And people watched and it's like, what the hell are you doing?
I didn't see that.
Okay, so Crockett does her own video where she is like dancing as if she's coming out of a club. And she's doing the nasty mouth thing with that. And it's like, okay, what is this?
Okay.
Like this is not what people want. What people want is very straightforward.
Right.
They just want you to do your job. They want policy. They want substance. They want to believe that you believe in something.
Okay, so now we got 4.5.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But I don't know, man. It's just disappointing. That's all. And I don't know what it looks like. Like I don't know.
But you've got 40. You got 44 of these people, or 43. That's power in Congress. If you've got a block of 40, you got a block.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time you saw them on C-SPAN standing in unison saying, here's what we are demanding?
Oh, but they don't see themselves. It's like, I know what you mean, but it's not like, I don't think they see themselves in the context of Black as a block, if that makes sense. I know they call themselves that, but that's not the way they work politically, unless I'm wrong.
No, you're right. That's my point. Go back and read if you, and I'm not saying this to you, I'm saying this to your audience. Folks, go read Ossie Davis's speech. He was the keynote speaker at the first Congressional Black Caucus dinner in 1972. I can't remember the title. It might be, it's not the, I know the point of the speech was, it's not the man, it's the plan. I'm not sure if that was the title of the speech.
But that was the context.
But he was telling the caucus, it is your responsibility to lay out a plan for Black America. And he ends the speech by saying, if disaster should befall us, after the dust settles, and I'm paraphrasing, after the dust settles, when that one brother crawls out from the rubble, from the cave, he should be able to turn to the brother next to him and say, hey, man, what's the plan?
Yeah.
That was his direction to them, their first CBC dinner.
It's not the way they function now. That's not the way they function.
No,
Because
because
it
they
sounds like,
dysfunction. They don't function, they dysfunction.
yeah, yeah, they don't work as a political bloc
Mm-mm.
like that.
Anyway,
I want to get to Mahmoud Khalil before
yes.
we
Mhm.
think. You know, JD Vance went to Europe and browbeat the Europeans for the nonsense that the Europeans are doing. He is right in that speech because
Mhm.
Europe is locking people up for tweets. They are raiding people's houses for tweets or social media commentary that, for an American audience, is just part of the course. Somebody says bad things about you. Okay, they said bad things about me. I'm moving on with my life, right? Social media. I don't consider it to be real. But that's not the way Europe is functioning. And to make it even worse, if you're talking about like elections, the overthrowing of the Romanian election, Carl Quercescu, that is just outrageous.
Mhm.
The things that they were saying about the German election, saying if the wrong person wins in that election, we have the tools, just like we did in Romania, in order to change that election. You get the protests or let's say the pressure put against Georgia's government. Like, this is stuff that Europe is doing that for them has become somewhat of a normal way of operation. Okay, it's outrageous. But then when you get back to the US, their prize pony, Israel, gets criticized for committing a genocide, and the administration gets criticized for attempting to ethnically cleanse that area. They go on a spree of putting pressure on campuses, trying to
Mhm.
pull money from those campuses, like effectively doing everything in their power at the White House to screw over people that are protesting Israel.
Mhm.
One of the people in this, Mahmoud Khalil, Columbia student or ex-Columbia student, that ICE tried to deport. He was here legally. He had permission to be here.
Mhm.
They kicked him out of school.
No, he
And
graduated.
oh, he did graduate. Good. Okay.
He graduated.
Okay.
They
Okay.
took him out of student housing, but he had graduated.
Okay. So they took. Thank you for that. They took him
Mhm.
out of student housing. ICE arrested him and tried to deport him. Apparently, a federal judge blocked the deportation. But the fact that you're trying to deport the guy because you don't like what the guy is saying is outrageous,
Well, no,
especially
no.
after that speech.
They're still trying to deport him.
Outrageous.
He is right now being held in detention in Louisiana. They sent him from New York to a facility in New Jersey. And then from the ICE facility in New Jersey, he now is sitting in detention in Louisiana.
It's outrageous.
And I believe the reason that he's in Louisiana is, I think, this is my opinion, I think because they're trying to venue shop. And they figure that that eventually the case will fall upon more sympathetic ears if he's in the South than if he's in the New York. I think that's the 9th district in
Yeah.
New York. So a judge, I think in New York, has suspended the deportation. Wants to have a hearing. So I think tomorrow that they're supposed to have a hearing, and his counsel is requesting that he be returned to New York.
Yes.
But it all centers around free speech. There is a very obscure State Department policy, I think it's a policy,
Mhm.
that gives the Secretary of State the ability to remove aliens that the Secretary of State determines are jeopardizing American foreign policy. This is what I believe the Trump administration is basing its position on. It's that his support for Palestine is a threat to American policy as the United States supports the Zionist settler colonial colony known as Israel. And based upon what Trump is saying, you and I could be arrested for having this conversation.
It got us fired. This is the same logic that got us fired, by the way.
Yeah.
When the Biden administration comes
Right.
out, and I remember I was on a flight to Malaysia, I believe, and I'm sitting in the airport and I'm looking at CNN, and Blinken comes out and says, we're putting sanctions on the parent companies. And even went further and saying, we believe that this has been a problem to our ability for foreign policy, saying that, the reason that countries in Africa and some of the global South hasn't lumped on to the Ukraine war is because of RT and Sputnik and the things that they have been saying around the globe. And I'm sitting there like, okay, what the hell does this mean for my job? I had no idea, right? But that's the same logic. This logic that Trump comes in and says, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. They've been going after people, and because they didn't necessarily like the things that they were saying on social media, et cetera, that is no more the process. And then they pull this nonsense where it's so weak. Like, it exudes weakness. It doesn't exude strength.
Oh, no question.
But the strength is you have a point of view. We have an American democracy. We have a First Amendment. God bless you, give your point of view. It's that this is insecure. It demonstrates that, A, you're in the bag for Zionist federal or colonial state, because otherwise the First Amendment will most likely apply. You're not telling me that this guy, one guy, and his point of view is a threat to U.S. foreign policy as it gives 80, 90% of Israel's ability to pursue a genocide. Like, this is outrageous. It puts you in the mind of George Bush saying this is enhanced interrogation. It's using language in order to get around the intent of a particular law. And it's unfortunate, because I think you're right. They're probably looking around for a judge that would effectively deport the guy.
What it demonstrates very clearly is the weakness in their position. Israel does not tolerate, the Zionist colony does not tolerate any level of dissension. Zero. That's why they're trying to equate support for Palestinians as being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that is all a fiction. That is a fraud. That is a lie. That is a contrived position created in order to support a lie. But that's all they have. And to show you the power of what we were doing at Sputnik, I have a buddy in Mozambique that was in a meeting with Mozambicans. I think that's what they're called.
Cool.
And they were going at it hard.
Yeah.
And my buddy is a guy who he has this incredible ability to de-escalate. So he's listening to this guy from Mozambique coming at him hard from the other end of the table, and he says to the guy, you know what? I got somebody you need to listen to. And the guy says, is he an American? And my boy says, and as a matter of fact, he is. He says, but he articulates a lot of the same policies that you're articulating. Well, why would I want to listen to an American? And so my buddy says, no, you need to read some of this guy's stuff. He says, well, who is your friend? And he says, Dr. Wilmer Leon. And the guy goes, you know him? And my boy goes, no, you know him? And he says, I listen to him every day. He says, I listen to Sputnik every day. And I don't say that to feather my own nest. I say that I was, as you were, a part of a very, very powerful. How many times have you been out in the last 4 months and someone has come to you and said, man, since your show went off, my day is ruined. I used to center my day around listening to your show. You know, I was in New York a couple of weeks ago with Richard Wolff, and I had 5 people come to me and tell me, man, I'm kind of lost now because you and Garland, you know, my day from 2 to 4 was you and Garland, and now you guys, you know, so but here's the thing. You were and are telling the truth. That's the point. Very long way to make the point. We were and are telling the truth.
It's frustrating. That sucks. And I feel bad for that guy. Because, you know, it's American. First Amendment is as American as apple pie. At the very least it should be. At the very least it was. And it is not a good look.
Because the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason.
Yes.
They didn't get a Yahtzee cup and roll out some dice and just randomly decide that free speech and the exercise of religion and the freedom to assemble, they didn't just randomly decide. Every comma, every semicolon, every capital letter in that document is there for a reason.
Yeah.
There is nothing arbitrary about the Constitution. We can debate its validity. We can debate a whole lot of stuff about the document. But every single comma, that's why the Second Amendment should no longer even be in the Constitution, because there are commas, not semicolons. Those are dependent clauses, not independent clauses. And if you know anything about English grammar and sentence structure, you cannot debate that point.
You will know that there are a lot of lefties that will greatly disagree with you on that.
Look, man, a semicolon is there for a reason.
No, I mean the Second Amendment thing. No, I met lefties who are firm defenders, because in their mind,
they're wrong, because you argue with the comma. Don't argue with me.
No,
argue with sentence structure.
There are plenty of lefties that firmly believe in the right to bear arms because they don't trust the government.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying we don't have the right to bear arms. What I'm saying is it's not guaranteed in the Second Amendment. That's not what the Second Amendment says.
Agrees. 1,000% agree with you on that.
It doesn't. I had this argument with Wayne LaPierre in the green room at CNN and his attorney. Yes.
Interesting. Because look, you're absolutely right. Give me your argument on that. But I do believe you're right, because it doesn't say you can walk around with a grenade launcher, right? It's talking about very specific. You can join a militia, but these aren't militias.
And we now have a National Guard. We don't have militias anymore because we don't need militias anymore because we have the National Guard. Mm-hmm. The right of a people, comma, in defense of the nation, comma, not semicolon. These are dependent clauses. Don't argue with me.
Right.
Argue with Stephen Crutchfield, who taught me English when I was in high school. Don't argue with me. Call Mr. Crutchfield and let him. I'm sorry, Crutcher. Let Mr. Crutcher argue with Mr. Crutcher. He's the one that literally hit me in the head with the English book when I went to a Catholic high school. He hit me in the head with the English book when I was in high school. Dog,
Yeah, don't argue. Yeah,
don't argue with me. Argue with him.
Look, you're absolutely right. For whatever reason, the Supreme Court doesn't interpret it that way. But you're absolutely right.
So my whole point. The First Amendment is the First Amendment because it's the most important amendment. That was my point.
Yes, everything else depends upon the ability to speak, and the ability to
petition the government for your
exactly for grievances. Right. Dr. Wilmer Leon, man, I always appreciate having you on here. Dr. Wilmer Leon is a political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, and host of Connecting the Dots. Dr. Wilmer, where can people find you on your show?
WilmerLeon.com. And today I have on Connecting the Dots on YouTube from 3 to 4 Eastern. Robert Fantina is joining me today.
He's a great guest.
Robert Fantina is joining me today. And Ajamu Baraka joins me tomorrow on and Saturday on my XM show, Congressman Al Green.
Are you serious?
Al Green joins me from Congressman Al Green joins me from 12 to 1 Eastern on Sirius XM 126 on Saturday.
That's a hell of a guess. Dr. Wilmer Leon. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
As always. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Be safe.